Some of the most captivating Hollywood stories are the ones that happen off-screen, tucked away from the glitz and glamour of the cameras. The saga of Nancy Kulp and Buddy Ebsen is one of those tales, a heady mix of drama, ambition, and simmering tension that pulls you in from the first whisper. Long before the Beverly Hillbillies catapulted them to stardom, their lives were already packed with twists and turns that could fill a novel. And believe me, the drama that unfolded before that iconic sitcom is the secret sauce to understanding the sparks that would later fly between them. Let's start with Nancy Kulp, a star unlike any other in Tinseltown. Born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Nancy was the only child of Robert, a traveling salesman, and Marjorie, a schoolteacher turned principal. Her upbringing was steeped in structure and academia, far from the glitz of Hollywood. When her family relocated to Miami, Nancy blossomed in a world that valued intellect over celebrity. By 1943, she had a journalism degree in hand, ready to take on the world with her pen rather than her presence on screen. But Nancy's journey wasn't a straight shot to success. She began her career writing for the Miami Beach Tropics, a local paper where she interviewed the likes of Clark Gable and even the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Impressive, right? Then came World War II, and Nancy answered the call. Without hesitation, she joined the U.S. Naval Reserve, rising to the rank of lieutenant. Imagine her, young, determined, and breaking barriers while serving her country. Now, let's flip the script and take a look at Buddy Ebsen, the polar opposite of Nancy in so many ways. Born and raised in Orlando, Florida, Buddy had dreams as big as the stage itself. Dancing was his passion, and he and his sister Vilma were a hit on the vaudeville circuit, billed as the baby of stairs. Buddy's easy charm and captivating moves made him a crowd favorite, but life wasn't always as graceful as his steps. When Buddy landed in New York, he barely had enough money to buy a sandwich. Hustling was his only option, and boy, did he hustle. Broadway opened its doors, and soon, Hollywood beckoned. Buddy danced alongside Shirley Temple, graced the silver screen in musicals, and even worked with Walt Disney to perfect Mickey Mouse's movements. But his dream gig turned into a nightmare when he was cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. Sounds glamorous, right? Not quite. The aluminum dust in his makeup caused severe poisoning, hospitalizing him and forcing him out of the role. After recovering, Buddy's path took a few detours. He dabbled in sailing, taught naval officers during World War II, and learned to roll with life's punches, all while keeping his signature laid-back demeanor. Now, picture this. Nancy and Buddy, two individuals from vastly different worlds, each with unique quirks and unshakable determination. By the 1950s, Nancy had made her way to Hollywood. She had tried marriage, which didn't last, worked in MGM's publicity department, and was eventually spotted by a director who saw her potential as an actress. Nancy wasn't destined for leading roles, but she carved out a niche for herself. Whether she was a maid on I Love Lucy or a boozy waitress on Maverick, Nancy's sharp wit and no-nonsense charm stole every scene she graced. Buddy and Nancy's paths were bound to cross, and when they did, sparks flew, not just the good kind. Their time on the Beverly Hillbillies was legendary for more reasons than one, but it's their individual journeys that truly set the stage for the drama to come. Meanwhile, Buddy Ebsen was carving out his own corner in television, earning a reputation as the go-to guy for folksy, down-to-earth roles that audiences couldn't help but adore. He had this unshakable air of reliability, a man who seemed easy to work with and a steady presence on any set. But beneath that laid-back exterior, there was more to Buddy than met the eye. Here's where things get interesting. By the late 50s, the paths of Nancy Kulp and Buddy Ebsen started to converge in Hollywood's small, tightly knit television scene. They weren't working together just yet, but their names were beginning to circulate in the same circles. Nancy was building her reputation as a sharp, hard-working actress unafraid to speak her mind. Buddy, on the other hand, came across as a bit old school, holding firm to more traditional views. Both were hustling hard to find their breakthrough. Nancy, who didn't fit the cookie-cutter mold of Hollywood glamour, leaned into her unique appeal. She specialized in quirky, scene-stealing characters that left an impression. Guest spots on hit shows proved her versatility. Buddy, meanwhile, was bouncing from westerns to dramas to comedies, even showing off his dark side as a villain on shows like Gunsmoke and Maverick. He He wasn't afraid to experiment, and it paid off. By the early 1960s, they were seasoned players in Hollywood, respected for their craft. But neither had landed the role that would launch them into stardom. That was about to change when the Beverly Hillbillies entered the picture. When the Beverly Hillbillies hit TV screens, it was like a cultural earthquake. The antics of the Clampettes, a ragtag family of Ozark hillbillies who strike oil and move to Beverly Hills, captivated millions. It was charming, hilarious, and just a little absurd. Nancy Kulp and Buddy Ebsen found themselves thrust into the heart of this phenomenon. Nancy was cast as Miss Jane Hathaway, the sharp, bird-watching secretary to the Clampettes' banker, Mr. Drysdale. It was a role that fit her like a glove. Miss Jane was no ordinary secretary. She was smart, fiercely loyal, and often the only voice of reason in the chaos surrounding the Clampettes. Nancy infused the character with humor and heart, earning an Emmy nomination and the admiration of fans everywhere. Buddy, meanwhile, stepped into the shoes of Jed Clampett, the patriarch of the Clampett family. Jed was a man of simple wisdom, warm charm, and rock-solid common sense. Buddy's portrayal made Jed relatable and lovable, grounding the show's humor with his steady presence. His signature catchphrase, "Well, doggies," became an iconic part of American pop culture. The show was an instant hit, and audiences couldn't get enough of the fish-out-of-water tale. The Clampettes' bewildered yet endearing clashes with Beverly Hills extravagance were comedy gold. And in the middle of it all, Nancy and Buddy brought their characters to life in ways that felt genuine and unforgettable. But behind the scenes, things weren't quite as harmonious as they seemed on screen. While Jed and Miss Jane's interactions radiated warmth and respect, Nancy and Buddy's real-life relationship was frosty at best. The tension wasn't about acting styles or professionalism. It was personal. Their clashing personalities and deeply opposing worldviews created a rift that couldn't be ignored. On screen, they were a perfect team, but off-screen, they were a study in contrasts, a dynamic that added an unspoken layer to their iconic roles and left a lingering question. How much of that on-screen chemistry was real, and how much was pure acting magic? Buddy and Nancy's relationship off-screen wasn't anything but smooth. You see, Buddy was politically conservative, and he wasn't shy about making his views known. Nancy, on the other hand, leaned more liberal. This wasn't just a matter of differing opinions. It was a fundamental divide in how they viewed the world. Now, picture being forced to work with someone day in and day out who stands for everything you don't agree with. That was Nancy and Buddy's reality. Castmates often witnessed the two getting into heated debates, which sometimes lasted for weeks. This wasn't lighthearted banter or playful disagreements. It was intense, serious stuff that revealed just how deeply their beliefs clashed. But despite the tension, both actors knew the show had to go on. The Beverly Hillbillies was a juggernaut, and they had a job to do. The show was a smash hit, pulling in millions of viewers every week. It was, for a time, the #1 show on television. Its popularity didn't fade easily, and audiences adored the Clampettes and their quirky antics. In front of the camera, Nancy and Buddy delivered performances that kept audiences coming back for more. Nancy's Miss Jane was one of the most beloved characters on the show. Not flashy or over the top, but relatable. She was the hardworking secretary caught in the middle of chaos, always trying to do the right thing, and with a soft spot for Jethro. Her innocent crush on him might have been played for laughs, but there was a sweetness to it that viewers couldn't help but appreciate. Buddy's Jed, the calm, steady patriarch of the Clampett family, was the glue that held everything together, no matter how wild or ridiculous the situation. Whether navigating Beverly Hills high society or trying to keep Granny's moonshine experiments in check, Jed always stayed cool. His steady demeanor was a comforting contrast to the madness, and it's no wonder people tuned in every week to see what would happen next. But behind the smiles and laughter, the tension between Nancy and Buddy never really disappeared. Some say it only got worse as the show went on. It wasn't just their differing political views, it was a clash of personalities. Nancy was sharp, intellectual, and never shied away from a confrontation. Buddy was charming, but stubborn. When these two forces collided, sparks flew. It didn't help that the show often kept them in close quarters. As Miss Jane and Jed, they shared numerous scenes together. While they may have looked friendly and jovial on screen, those watching closely could sense the undercurrent of frustration between them. Donna Douglas, who played Ellie Mae, once admitted that Nancy and Buddy would argue for weeks about their differences. Can you imagine how tense that set must have been? But even with all the tension, they both maintained their professionalism. They knew the show had to succeed, and their personal disagreements couldn't stand in the way of that. Keeping things civil while working so closely with someone you fundamentally clash with is no easy feat. But somehow, they pulled it off. The audience never saw the cracks in the facade. When the Beverly Hillbillies eventually came to an end, it had cemented its place in pop culture history. People still talk about the show, and its influence can still be seen in many shows that followed. But for Nancy and Buddy, the end of the show didn't mean the end of their story. Their differences, deep-rooted and unyielding, would continue to shape how they interacted long after the cameras stopped rolling. Nancy decided to venture down an unexpected road: politics. In 1984, long after the Beverly Hillbillies had ended, at the age of 62, she threw her hat into the ring for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. Some people questioned whether an actress could transition to politics, but Nancy was determined. After all, Ronald Reagan had made the leap, hadn't he? She ran as a Democrat in Pennsylvania's 9th Congressional District, which was solidly Republican. Her opponent, Bud Shuster, had already served 6 terms, and the odds were stacked against her from the start. But Nancy wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. She campaigned relentlessly, connecting with voters and pushing her ideas for change. Even though the battle seemed uphill, she fought with everything she had. What Nancy didn't expect was for Buddy Ebsen to make an appearance in the race, and not on her side. Despite having no ties to Pennsylvania or the election, Buddy volunteered to record a radio ad for her opponent. In the ad, he criticized Nancy, calling her too liberal and accusing her of using her celebrity to sway voters. It wasn't just a political disagreement, it felt deeply personal. Nancy felt blindsided, like she had been betrayed by someone she had worked with for years. Nancy didn't hold back when she talked about it. In interviews, she was clear. Buddy had no right to get involved in the race. He's not the kindly old Jed Clampett that you saw on the show, she said, her voice tinged with frustration. She also made it clear that even though they'd never gotten along, she would never have done something like that to him. The hurt in her words was palpable, and it was evident that the sting of Buddy's actions stayed with her long after the campaign. The ad didn't help Nancy's campaign. It likely made things worse. She lost the election by a wide margin, with her opponent securing more than 66% of the vote. While Nancy didn't blame Buddy directly for her defeat, the emotional toll of his actions stayed with her. After the loss, she left Pennsylvania for a while to clear her head, returning only after she'd had time to process everything. Buddy, on the other hand, didn't seem to regret his actions at the time. He firmly believed in what he had said about Nancy and stood by his decision. But as the years passed, a sense of remorse seemed to creep in. By the end of his life, he expressed regret over the radio ad and the way their feud had escalated. Unfortunately, by that point, it was too late to fully mend the relationship. Their contact was sparse after the campaign, and when they did reconcile, it was brief. As for Nancy, she found a new calling in teaching, where she could channel her knowledge and experience into something meaningful. She became an artist in residence at Juniata College, a small liberal art school in Pennsylvania's peaceful countryside. There, she taught acting and inspired generations of students with her wisdom and warmth. Her time at Juniata marked a calm, fulfilling chapter in her life, far from the drama of Hollywood and the turbulence of politics. In that quiet space, Nancy finally found the community that valued her for who she truly was. Her students often spoke of her with admiration, not just for her Hollywood fame, but for her genuine dedication to helping others grow. She infused her lessons with humor and heart, creating a space where every student felt welcome on stage, no matter where they came from. It's easy to picture Nancy, with a warm smile, sharing stories from her Beverly Hillbillies days, offering advice about life on and off the stage. Her passion for teaching was clear, and she made the classroom feel like a place of possibility where dreams could take root. Even as she shifted her focus to teaching, Nancy never fully stepped away from acting. She continued to perform in local theater productions and made occasional guest appearances on television. Acting was in her blood, and her later roles reflected her deep love for the craft and the power of storytelling. But Nancy's life wasn't all about the spotlight. She lived a full, vibrant life, connecting with everyone around her, students, friends, and neighbors. She made the most of every moment, never letting the everyday joys of life pass her by. In 1990, however, Nancy faced her toughest challenge yet when she was diagnosed with cancer. But true to her resilient nature, she didn't back down. She continued to teach and stay active in her community for as long as she could. Friends and colleagues admired her bravery, her strength, and her ability to face hardship with grace, qualities she had shown time and time again throughout her life. When Nancy passed away in 1991, she left behind a legacy that went far beyond her role as Miss Jane Hathaway. Her story was one of persistence, creativity, and an unwavering refusal to be defined by any single chapter of her life. Meanwhile, Buddy Ebsen walked his own path in the later years of his career. While he continued to act, his roles became less frequent as time passed. After the Beverly Hillbillies, Buddy kept working, appearing in movies and television shows. One of his notable roles was in the detective series Barnaby Jones, which ran for several years and kept him in the public's eye. Yet, no matter what he did, Buddy was always remembered as Jed Clampett, the down-to-earth, folksy patriarch with an iconic catchphrase. At face value, Buddy seemed to embrace this association, showing no signs of discomfort with being typecast. He attended events, gave interviews, and reflected fondly on his time with the Clampetts. However, privately, it wasn't always easy. Imagine dedicating your career to a wide range of roles and talents, only to be forever linked to one character. Still, Buddy handled it with grace, often laughing it off. Later in life, he wrote a memoir, sharing stories about his Hollywood journey, his varied career, and of course, the infamous feud with Nancy. Through it all, Buddy remained a beloved figure in the world of entertainment, his legacy tied to both his work and the unforgettable character of Jed Clampett. Beyond his acting career, Buddy led a rich and dynamic life. He was an accomplished sailor, finding both peace and adventure on the water whenever he could. But his creativity didn't stop with acting. Buddy also explored the world of writing, penning novels that gave him a chance to express himself beyond the screen. He was the kind of man who couldn't sit still. No matter how many years passed, he always found new ways to stay active and immersed in life. In his personal life, Buddy was blessed with a long and fulfilling marriage to Dorothy, his third wife. Together, they spent many happy years, and as Buddy grew older, he found himself surrounded by the love and warmth of his family. He lived to an impressive age of 95, passing away in 2003. By then, many of his peers had already passed on, making him one of the last living connections to the golden age of television. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy lives on through the timeless reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies and the cherished memories of those who worked alongside him. When looking back on the relationship between Buddy and Nancy, it's clear that theirs was a clash of two vibrant, strong-willed personalities. Both were passionate, talented, and unafraid to speak their minds. But their differences created a divide that was difficult to overcome. Despite their tensions, however, the magic they created on screen is undeniable. As Jed and Miss Jane, they brought a perfect blend of warmth, humor, and sincerity to millions of viewers, proof of their professionalism and the undeniable chemistry that made the Beverly Hillbillies one of the most beloved shows of all time.